What is the shocking teaching of Buddha? Introduction: the surprising impact of Buddha's teachings. When you hear the word Buddhism, what comes to mind? The teachings of Buddha, or Buddhism, show us a path to quietly observe our minds and touch the truth of life. However, among these teachings, there are numerous insights that remain astonishing, even to us living in the modern world. These teachings don't just include concepts like enlightenment or impermanence, but also sharply point out that essence that we tend to forget in our daily lives. So, what kind of teachings might shock us? In this video, we will explore several of Buddha's teachings that are especially impactful in today's world and dive into their deeper meanings. Chapter 1: Impermanence, Everything Changes. First, let's look at one of the core teachings of Buddha, the concept of impermanence. Buddha taught that everything in this world is in constant change. Just as a flower blooms and eventually wilts, our lives too are in a state of continuous transformation. No matter how beautiful the moment or event is, it will inevitably pass. We, living in today's world, often seek stability and lasting happiness, but Buddha's teachings shake this expectation at its foundation. He tried to convey to us that attachment to things that constantly change only leads to suffering. For example, we often dream of eternal love or unchanging relationships, but from Buddha's perspective, these are merely illusions. Instead, we can find true happiness by accepting change and recognizing the beauty in it. Chapter 2: The Nature of Suffering, the Four Noble Truths. Next, I'd like to introduce Buddha's teaching about the Four Noble Truths. Buddha taught that there are unavoidable sufferings in our lives, and the concept of the Four Noble Truths is crucial for understanding the nature of life. The Four Noble Truths refer to the four main types of suffering: birth, aging, illness, and death. The act of being born itself is suffering, growing old, becoming sick, and ultimately dying are all inevitable sufferings. Moreover, the eightfold sufferings include the suffering of separation from loved ones, love separation suffering, the suffering of encountering those we dislike, hate meeting suffering, the suffering of unfulfilled desires, not getting suffering, and the suffering arising from the body and mind, 5 aggregate suffering. Through these teachings, Buddha helps us realize that the sufferings we try to avoid are, in fact, an inherent part of life. This teaching is shocking because modern society tends to emphasize avoiding suffering and always staying comfortable. However, Buddha teaches us the opposite. Instead of fleeing from suffering, it is important to face and understand it. This shift in perspective can significantly influence our lives. Chapter 3: Emptiness, Nothing has a solid core. Another surprising concept in Buddha's teachings is that of emptiness, nyat. Emptiness means that nothing has a solid, permanent essence. We tend to find a fixed existence in people and things, but Buddha pointed out that this is an illusion. For example, we recognize ourselves as independent beings. However, from a Buddhist perspective, we exist only through our interdependence with others and the environment, constantly undergoing change. In other words, our self is not fixed but rather a constantly evolving entity. This understanding shakes the very core of how we perceive the fixed identity of ourselves. One reason we cling to people and things is that we believe they exist as fixed, permanent entities. But by understanding that everything lacks a permanent essence and is ever-changing, we open a path to freedom from attachment and suffering. Chapter 4: Compassion, Love and Kindness for All Living Beings. Among Buddha's teachings, one that leaves a deep impression on modern people is the teaching of compassion. Compassion means showing unconditional love and kindness to all living beings. It goes beyond simple emotional kindness or sympathy and arises from deep understanding and empathy. In today's society, self-centered values are strong, and competition with others is fierce. However, Buddha taught that empathy and consideration for others is the true path to happiness and peace. In particular, having compassion for enemies or those who have harmed us demonstrates significant spiritual growth. When people encounter this teaching, many are taken aback. This is because we often seek to protect ourselves by excluding others or trying to gain the upper hand in competition. But Buddha taught the opposite. By having a heart full of compassion, we not only free ourselves but also enrich our relationships with others. Chapter 5: The Power of Letting Go of Attachment. We often seek comfort and security by clinging to things, but as long as we are attached, our minds will not be free. Buddha taught that letting go of all attachments is the path to true liberation. This teaching, too, is shocking for those of us living in the modern world. For example, attachment to material wealth, status, or fame might bring temporary satisfaction, but once these things are lost, it leads to deep anxiety and suffering. Buddha taught that by letting go of attachment and accepting impermanence, we can achieve peace of mind and true freedom. When we realize this teaching, we begin to see how entangled we are in countless attachments in our lives. And we come to understand how letting go of those attachments can lighten our hearts and bring us closer to genuine happiness. Conclusion: how these shocking teachings can change us. Buddha's teachings continue to provide profound insights, even today. Some of these teachings might seem paradoxical at first and even overturn our common sense. However, it is precisely for this reason that we gain new realizations every time we encounter them. The teachings of impermanence, emptiness, compassion, and letting go of attachment are all keys to helping us reflect more deeply on life and move closer to true happiness. By understanding and practicing these teachings, we can free ourselves from the sufferings and confusion of daily life and attain a more abundant and peaceful mind. I encourage you to incorporate these surprising and profound teachings of Buddha into your daily life.